The Sinister Ellison family, unexplained disappearances of every daughter on their 16th birthday. Every daughter of the Ellison family vanished. Just poof. Gone. On the night of their sweet 16. In the pretty little town of Willow Pines, it was the horror story cloaked in a white picket fence. As Ella Ellison, bubbly and bright, stood on the cusp of her own fateful birthday, a sense of doom wrapped around her throat like a noose. A warning that was impossible to shake. The sun dipped low, casting eerie shadows in the neighborhood. Ella shifted uneasily as whispers floated around the block. They were often about her family's backyard barbecues, but tonight, they felt weighty, shrouded in something unspeakable. Her mother was in the kitchen, packing balloons for the party, yet Ella noticed something odd: a phone that buzzed and lit up late into the night. She caught her mom talking in hushed tones, her voice slipping into darkness, secrets dancing just beyond Ella's grasp. Then there were the shadows. They weren't just falling leaves. Sometimes, they slithered like predators, and at odd angles, always seeming to look back. It sent chills crawling up her spine. Ella's heart raced as the thickness of air fogged her mind, each stretch of dusk feeling alive with watchful eyes that knew things they shouldn't. Rumors swirled through her tight-knit group of friends, hushed under laughter. "You know what happened to Sarah, right?" they joked, the last Ellison daughter to turn 16. The chuckles held an undertone of fear that made her gut twist. Unable to laugh along, Ella knew there was a deep truth there, a dark legacy echoing through generations of women in her family. The worst came when Ella stumbled across the diary, Sarah's diary. It lay under the floorboards, dust thick on its spine, as if it had been waiting for her. With trembling hands, she opened the worn pages. The frantic scrawl jumped out at her like it was alive. "It's coming for me," it read. "It knows. It's watching." Panic gripped her as she read about a guardian, a sinister presence that lurked, ready to claim its due on the night of her sister's sweet 16. "Ella, honey, come help." Her mother's voice broke through the haze of fear, but her heart missed a beat. Suddenly, the light in the living room flickered, casting ominous shadows that danced across the wall. Whatever she found, the truth would be worse than she feared. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Ella's pulse thundered in her ears as she confronted the town's mayor, desperation spilling from her lips. He wore a smile that felt wrong, a mask of authority covering the deep suspicion that pooled in his eyes. "You should let this go, Ella," he said softly, a knowing smirk curling his lips. She felt it then, his connection to her family's heart of darkness. A chill slithered down her spine, like cold fingers grabbing at her heart. As the clock inched closer to her birthday, a storm brewed outside, rattling the windows. The air outside thickened, heavy with foreboding. Ella stood at the open door, wind screaming into her home, an invitation to the unknown. Ink-black shapes swirled in the shadows beyond the porch, beckoning her forward. Breath caught in her throat. She knew she had to run to face whatever awaited that would claim her, like it had done to Sarah and before her. With the clock striking midnight, Ella stepped outside. The darkness felt alive, trailing her every move. She knew she was not alone. Something sinister lurked, waiting to wrap its cold fingers around her throat like it had for generations of her family. As she crossed into the forbidden part of town, her heart hammered in her chest, dread swallowing her whole. Would she find her sister's fate or unravel secrets meant to keep her trapped? Breathless, Ella stood alone against the darkness, barely hanging on as the shadows closed in around her. Would she lose herself in the night, or fight to break the cycle? The wind roared through the trees, clawing at Ella's hair and throwing chills down her spine. Each step she took into the darkness felt like a leap into an abyss. Shadows writhed around her, tightening their grasp as if testing her resolve. A hollow feeling deep in her stomach told her she was stepping into the very heart of her family's curse. Her gaze shot to the old trees, their gnarled branches twisted like skeletal fingers reaching out for her. In the eerie silence, she could hear her own pulse echoing in her ears, drowning out the distant rumble of thunder. The world felt upside down, every shadow was a threat, each rustle a warning. Despite the storm's chaos above, she felt a pull drawing her deeper into the gloom, a well of ancient whispers swirling around her. "It's here, it's watching." Sarah's words echoed in her mind. Panic clawed at her chest, urging her to turn back. Yet, a fierce determination sparked within. She had to know what happened to her sister. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, tall and gaunt, its features obscured by the darkness. Ella's breath hitched as it moved toward her, gliding silently across the gravel. In an instant, the wind shifted, revealing a pair of gleaming eyes, cold and cruel, fixating on her very soul. "Ella." The voice slithered out, a slithering whisper that wrapped around her like a serpent. "You've come searching for answers. But are you ready to face the truth?" Terror clawed at her throat as she stood frozen, heart pounding like a drum. All that she had heard, all the warnings from those who knew the Ellison legacy, rushed back to her. The vanishing daughters, the grim fates, she was no different. "Leave now," the voice continued, darker now, the storm's howl amplifying each sinister word. "You cannot escape what awaits you." For a moment, fear nearly paralyzed her. But then the thought of Sarah ignited a spark of defiance. "No." Ella's voice pierced the heavy air. "I will not let it take me. I will not disappear." As soon as the words left her lips, the figure lunged, shadows swirling around its outstretched hand. Time slowed. Ella couldn't breathe, couldn't think. In an animalistic cry, she turned and fled, sprinting through the twisting maze of trees and into the deeper night. Branches scratched at her skin, but Ella pressed on, determination fueling her speed. She could feel the darkness chasing her, wrapping around her ankles like creeping vines, tugging her down. She had to reach the edge of the woods, the last glimmer of hope, but at that moment, she heard a voice, this time familiar, soothing. "Ella." It was her mother, calling from the distance, the tone almost desperate. "Ella, come back." Could it really be her? Confusion tangled with fear. Ella skidded to a halt, heart racing. "Mom!" she yelled into the murky depths of night. But the icy grip of dread returned, numbing her resolve. "Ella, please." The voice morphed, now full of urgency, more commanding. "You're not safe. You mustn't listen." The shadows coiled tighter around her, coiling like a snake ready to strike. The air shimmered with the tension of the storm as she stood at the crossroad between two worlds, the fear that sought to bind her, and an unyielding love that reached into the darkness. Ella took a step into the unknown, eyes wide, breath quickening. Would she break free, or become yet another lost whisper in the night? The answer loomed, close enough to grasp yet infinitely unattainable, as the storm howled around her. But in that moment of peril, doubt and desperation roared to life. And somewhere in that suffocating darkness, a sinister laughter echoed, chilling her to the bone. What was waiting in the shadows? With each heartbeat, the answer drew nearer. Ella's mind raced as she took a step closer to her mother's voice, uncertainty pulling at her heart. The shadows writhed with malevolence, clawing at her like starving beasts. Her breath quickened, the very air around her thick with tension. "Mom! I'm coming!" she shouted, but she hesitated, glancing back at the swirling darkness. The laughter echoed again, a mocking sound that seemed to bounce off the trees, the wind carrying it like a cruel joke. Ella's instincts screamed at her to run, yet she couldn't shake off the feeling of familiarity in her mother's call. Was it really her mother, or a sinister trick played by whatever haunted these woods? With steely resolve, Ella turned and ran toward the voice. It had to be her mother. The shadows hissed and snapped, almost playful as they danced in her peripherals, urging her to fall, to stumble, to succumb to their dark embrace. She barreled deeper, dodging low branches, the thorns grasping at her clothes as if they too were players in this wicked game. "Ella, hurry. You have to get away from it." This time, the voice was tinged with desperation. Ella's heart ached at the fear in her mother's tone. The deeper she went, the more the shadows pressed in around her. It felt like a living thing, a monstrous entity that grew as her resolve faltered. She couldn't let it win. Not now. With a final burst of strength, she tripped over a root, landing hard on the damp earth. Pain shot through her knee, but she pushed herself up, feeling the cold seep into her bones. She could see something in outline forming just ahead, flickering like a candle in the wind. Her mother's silhouette, just out of reach. "Ella!" The urgency intensified, each syllable cutting through the chaos of the forest. But in that moment, the darkness swelled around her, and the gaunt figure reappeared, looming over her like a predator. The malicious smile twisted on its face, chilling her more than the relentless freezing wind. "Did you think you could escape?" It hissed, slithering closer, eyes glinting in the dark like shards of ice. "Get away!" Ella shouted, scrambling back, but the shadows surged forward, eager to claim her. Instinct kicked in, she reached for a branch beside her, gripping it like a lifeline. "Ella, listen to me." The voice pierced through the clamor of the dark. "You must trust your instincts. The truth is it knows you." Her heart sank. What did that mean? The laughter of the figure twisted around her, an absurd orchestra to the impending doom. Was it feeding off her fear? As she rose to her feet, the woods trembled with an unnatural energy, branches like talons digging into the earth. She had heard of the Ellison curse but thought it only folklore. The sense of dread thickened, as if the very ground was alive, pressing against her, begging her to succumb. "No. I will not be another victim." Ella shrieked, and in one swift motion, she swung the branch, aiming for the figure's shadowy face. And then silence fell, a suffocating, heavy silence. Ella held her breath, heart pounding as the shadows retreated slightly, revealing an unsettling sight. The figure melted into a pool of darkness, folding inward like a dying flame. And in that moment, she saw within the darkness a glimpse of faces, faded memories of the lost daughters, each one a reflection of her terror. The gasping realization struck, this was more than just the embodiment of her fear. It carried every heartache, every lost moment. Each name, each scream echoed in the dark. "Ella!" the voices whispered in unison, a haunting chorus, as the shadows trembled and began to close in once again. "They're waiting for you!" panicked, Ella glanced back toward where her mother's voice had called, desperately clinging to the hope of safety. It flickered like a dying star. But the moment was slipping away, the shadows surged once more, and with them, the grim reality of her fate danced tantalizingly close. One final chance remained. Would she confront the truth behind the curse? Or would she become yet another name lost in the darkness? And as the storm raged above, the air quivered with an ultimatum. It was time for the final choice. Ella's pulse thundered in her ears as the shadows closed in, clinging to her like a shroud. She could barely focus, each breath coming in sharp gasps. The faces, those contorted memories of the lost, hovered around her, their eyes pleading and accusing as they beckoned her to join them. She shoved the branch forward, creating a barrier against the swirling darkness, and managed to break free of their haunting grasp, if only for a moment. "Mom!" she shouted again, desperation infusing her voice, fueling her resolve. But as the shadows receded, the flickering silhouette of her mother became smaller, dimmer, almost ethereal. "I'm coming." She stumbled forward, heart in throat, scanning the trees for any sign of her mother. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back to the darkness and flee, to escape the horror calling her by name, yet she pressed on, driven by an unyielding will. "Ella, you must find me." The voice sounded closer now, raw with urgency. But just as she pushed deeper, the laughter erupted again. A cacophony of mocking sounds swirled around her, seeking to drown her in despair. The ground beneath her feet felt unstable, shifting like sand. It made her question the reality of what she was running towards. There were secrets buried in the roots of these trees, and she sensed them clawing at her memories, whispering of her family's hidden past. What truth lay at the heart of the Ellison curse? One step after another each felt like a declaration of war against the malevolent shadows. She ducked under branches, her hands freezing against damp bark, when suddenly the air shifted, charged with static energy. It made her skin crawl, a chill igniting every nerve. Ella, the whispers turned accusatory. You shouldn't have come back. She froze, visions of her childhood colliding with the distorted reality surrounding her. Images of family dinners shattered by echoes of laughter, the same laughter that now mocked her misery. Memories twisted, showing her moments of happiness tainted with darkness. Mom! What do I do? She cried, fear making her voice tremble. The shadows pressed around her, thickening, closing in with a predatory intensity. They flickered like candle flames in a storm, teasing her with glimpses of safety just beyond their grasp. Face it. Her mother's voice broke through the storm, fierce and filled with desperate warning. You have to confront the truth of your legacy. Ella felt a knot form in her stomach. Legacy? What kind of legacy lurked in the darkness, waiting for her? She had known pain, years of loss, but could it be that her family's history was more twisted than she ever imagined? With renewed determination, she stepped towards the light, believing each wobbly movement might draw her nearer to safety. I will not let you take me! She screamed. Suddenly, without warning, the laughter morphed into anguished screams. The forest itself seemed to swell with rage as the shadows coiled tighter around her. Panic surged, and Ella realized she had become the hunted. Her heart raced, she could almost taste the fear in the air, thick and metallic. What was the truth? Betrayal? Loss? Or something far more sinister? She could feel something trying to ensnare her thoughts, pulling her into a vortex of despair. The faces flickered again, more desperate this time, and she choked on a sob as their horror washed over her in waves. Then, a single voice broke through the symphony of chaos, resonating within her like a lighthouse beckoning a lost ship. Ella, we are bound by blood. You must understand. And there it was, a flicker of recognition, a cold realization that ascended like a bitter fog. Could she really face her legacy? Would she embrace the truth, or would she let the shadows claim her as they had claimed so many before? As the sky rumbled ominously overhead, Ella prepared herself for the confrontation that awaited her. And just as she stood on the precipice of revelation, the darkness roared back, swallowing her world and echoing the last words she would hear before everything faded to black. You don't know what you're walking into. What chilling truth awaited Ella beneath the buried memories of the cursed Ellison lineage? Would freeing herself mean sacrificing something even greater? Ella's eyes snapped open, but the darkness was relentless. It enveloped her, pressing against her body like a suffocating blanket. A wind howled through the treetops above, soundlessly mocking her turmoil. She felt weightless, suspended between fear and uncertainty, as if she had been cast into an endless void. Desperately, she tried to stand, her legs shaky and numb. Each step felt foreign, as if the ground beneath her were shifting like a dream slowly unraveling. The shadows, now whispering sweetly in feigned innocence, called to her, weaving in and out of her vision like lost souls searching for redemption. Ella, that voice again, unmistakably her mother's, echoed somewhere deep within the suffocating darkness. It sparked flickers of unwanted memories, but the reminders of warmth were quickly swallowed by fear. How had it come to this? A curse tugging at her veins, tracing its unnerving fingers through the lineage of her family. Mom! Ella shouted, her voice barely more than a croak, swallowed immediately by the howling silence. As she forged onward, she stumbled upon something solid beneath her feet, wooden steps, weathered. She leaned close, her fingers brushing over the splintered surface. It felt familiar, yet twisted. The staircase led to a door that exuded a strange warmth, beckoning. It stood ajar, a single shaft of light cutting through the blackness, inviting, almost dazzling against the dark backdrop. Swallowing her dread, she stepped forward, pushing the door open. The hinges creaked ominously, the sound echoing like an omen. Inside, she found herself in a dimly lit room filled with undecipherable shapes, obscured objects cast like shadows across the dusty floor. The air felt thick and electric, full of unspokens, the walls whispering secrets. She stepped cautiously, each footfall careful, echoing through the oppressive silence like a death knell. At the far end of the room, a mirror stood, framed elaborately yet dust-covered. Ella felt drawn to it, some magnetic force pulling at her heart. She approached, her breath ragged. As she neared the glass, she caught a glimmer of movement, a fleeting image of herself, aging backward, then forward again, transforming with each heartbeat. "Find the truth!" Her mother's voice shrieked, breaking through the haze, forcing Ella to glance away from the mirror. But the reflection was no longer her own. Instead, it showed figures dancing, daughters adorned in delicate gowns, voices harmonizing in a cursed lullaby. Shadows leapt around them, celebrating life even as their faces twisted in torment. One figure stood apart, looming larger, darker, its eyes glinted like black stars, piercing through time and despair, watching with a longing that felt all too familiar. "No," Ella muttered, gripping the frame of the mirror, suddenly understanding. "This is not just my legacy, it's a trap." The laughter swelled again, manic and unrestrained, echoing through the chamber. Ella staggered back, panic clawing at her throat. She had to find her mother, had to confront whatever truth lay within the reflections. But fear chained her feet, locking her to the spot. Then the mirror pulsed with a crimson light, catching her completely off guard. Images began flipping through the glass, a timeline of events, each daughter disappearing at 16. The hands of a clock ticking closer to the hour. Her heartbeat synced with the frantic rhythm. "Ella, the clock is ticking." Her mother warned, a warning faint yet urgent, seeking to pull Ella from the grasp of the mirror's sinister allure. The reflection warped, and Ella felt the shadows slither toward her, whispering lies, promising release. Just as it felt like she was about to surrender, a rush of clarity surged through her. She wasn't just facing a legacy, but a choice. Would she turn her back on the past, severing ties to the curse, or dive deeper into the dark abyss that sought to engulf her? As she turned away from the mirror, the shadows lunged. The last thing she heard before they closed in was a final desperate cry that resonated through the darkness. "Search your heart, it holds the key." Her world teetered between light and dark as the tendrils of despair wrapped around her. What awaited her on the other side of this confrontation? Would she rise above the curse, or would the shadows claim her for eternity? Ella stumbled back, the shadows brushing against her like icy fingers, their whispers growing wilder, more frantic. Her heart raced, thudding violently against her ribcage as she recognized their intentions. They didn't want to free her, they wanted her to join them, to become part of their wretched chorus. "Let go, Ella!" screamed her mother's voice, a desperate plea mingled with a chilling insistence. But what did "let go" mean here? Was it abandoning her family's cursed lineage or surrendering to the darkness that clawed at her sanity? Torn between the two, her breath quickened, fogging the air before her. In that moment, clarity struck, hitting her like a physical blow. The choice wasn't merely about the curse, it was about who she truly was. "I am not you!" Ella shouted, defiance erupting from deep within, her voice piercing the choir of shadows around her. The air crackled as her words hung, heavy and tangible, momentarily silencing the ethereal wail. Then the mirror pulsed again, and the ghostly figures within began to shift. The face of the darker figure morphed, shifting into a visage that held a profound familiarity. Her mother's eyes shone, but they flickered with an otherworldly glow, a reflection of the torment that had stolen so many. In that instance, doubts flared. Who did she want to be? Ella rushed toward the mirror, her heart pounding with fierce resolution. No, she wouldn't let them take her. She reached for the glass, feeling an unbearable heat radiate from the surface, searing her fingertips. She grasped it with determination, readying herself for whatever lurked behind, but the shadows surged, their forms blurring together in a horrific whirlpool. They were angry now, furious at her resistance. Their whispers turned into frantic chants, blending into a cacophony that threatened to tear her apart from the inside out. "Join us!" they hissed, claws scraping, ripping at the fabric of her mind, echoing unspeakable secrets and long-forgotten truths. "Stop it!" Ella screamed, her voice trembling but strong. "I will not become a victim." The mirror rippled, threatening to collapse inward. She could feel the sinister allure, the slip of destiny pulling her under. She closed her eyes, summoning memories of laughter, warmth, and the simple joys of life against the rising tide of assurance from the dark. Then, faintly at first, she remembered her mother's smile, the sparkle in her eye when they shared tales of bravery instead of fear. She could practically hear her mother urging her onward, the promise of love cutting through the darkness like a beacon. "Fight!" she whispered to herself, and like a spark igniting, the energy crackling through her body propelled her forward. Ella swung the mirror wide, shattering its facade with a forceful shove. Glass splintered in a heartbeat, each shard reflecting a different glimpse of her past and potential futures. The shadows screeched, their forms twisting in agony as the light spilled into the chamber, slicing through the darkness, but as the glass shattered, something else emerged, a dark hand, clawed and sinewy, reaching for her through the remaining fragments. It was too late, and she felt the crushing weight of regret pressing heavily against her chest. Ella could sense a powerful presence emerging from the chaos, pulling her against her will. A horrified realization washed over her, this was not merely the curse but something more, something alive, and it was hungry. "How do you escape what lies within?" An echoing voice resonated, the sound chilling her to the bone, as dread enveloped her once more. With a jolt, Ella realized that the battle had just begun. What would she face now that she'd torn apart the barrier confining her fate? Would the shadows retreat, or was this only the opening act in a harrowing tale of survival? The last shards of the mirror fell, and the darkness thrummed ominously around her. Ella stood at the precipice of an unfathomable abyss. The question loomed: could light drive back the shadows, or would her choice doom her to their fate forever? The echoing voice lingered, mirroring her doubts as the darkness began to swirl intensely. Ella stumbled backwards, the air thick like molasses. Panic flooded her, raw and overpowering. The shadows, enraged at her rebellion, twisted and contorted like snakes in a frenzy. "Ella," the voice slithered through the air, seductive and chilling. "You can't run from who you are." She could feel it. An invisible force tugging at her heart, that same haunting presence trying to slip beneath her skin. The ghostly hand reached out, sharp and elongated, as if trying to draw her into the depths. She couldn't let it win. "Not now. Get away from me!" Ella yelled, a newfound bravery surging through her as she spun on her heel, racing toward the chamber's exit. The walls seemed to pulsate, drumming with a morbid heartbeat, each thud pushing her deeper into terror. She barely took a breath, her legs propelling her forward, driven by fear and desperation, but the shadows surged from every crack and crevice, pouring forth to intercept her. They swarmed like a storm, screeching in furious harmony, their voices melding into nightmarish screams that shattered the air. "Join us. Be one of us." They called, each phrase echoing promises unkept and dreams devoured. Ella clenched her teeth, denying their pull. She had to remember her mother's words, the tales of resilience, of standing firm against the dark. With each step, her resolve grew. She was Ella Ellison, not just a victim but a fighter. Suddenly, she hit a wall, a hard blow that knocked the breath from her lungs. She crumpled to the ground, heart racing as shadows loomed over her, their features indecipherable yet terrifying. The air grew colder, the scent of decay filling her nostrils. Dread crawled up her spine like 1,000 spiders. "No!" she gasped, forcing herself to stand. Her eyes darted around, searching for the source of her salvation. The only glimmer of hope lay in the shards of the shattered mirror littering the floor. Each fragment sparkled with a hint of ethereal light, a threatening beacon against the dark. Before she could think, she grabbed a shard, its surface smooth and sharp as it glimmered in her shaking hand. Ella's breath came in ragged bursts. If she had to face whatever this was, she would do it with this fragile weapon. The shadows recoiled slightly, sensing her resolve. Their whispers grew agitated, more intense, like a pack of wolves cornered. You cannot hold them at bay forever, one whispered, mocking her courage. Watch me. Ella spat, brandishing the shard as the darkness lunged. At that moment, she swung the glass piece toward them, a flash of light erupting as it connected with the haze. The air crackled, breaking the oppressive weight around her as it tore a path through the swirling chaos. Light poured through the fissure it created, illuminating the chamber, every crevice, every shadow, all sharp and grotesque. The anguished faces of her ancestors appeared momentarily, twisted in pain and longing. She recognized them, pinned in that desperate state. Ella, help us! One cried, her voice choked with a mix of fear and despair. Panic surged through Ella's veins. She understood now the very shadows that sought to claim her were once her family. They were forever trapped in this nightmare, and she was finally forced to choose. She could feel their hunger, their desperate wish to break free. But at what cost? As she battled against the rising tide of sorrow, an idea gripped her mind fiercely. What if she could save them? What if it was time to confront the very legacy that had cursed her family? Could she draw them back into the light? Or would trying to save them plunge her deeper into the abyss? The shadows reformed, thicker than before, pushing back with a new intensity. Just as she felt the weight of their despair closing in, she bolted toward the light, fueled by fear and a wild hope. The darkness snarled, shrieking her name in riotous agony. You will not escape. The urgency spurred her on, but as she bounded forward, she caught a glimpse of her own reflection in the light. Twisted and dark, as if the shadows had also seeped into her soul. A cold wave of doubt washed over her. Was she already lost? Ella stood at the threshold, the line between salvation and doom blurring dangerously. Can light truly push back the dark, or was she doomed to succumb to the very curse she fought against? Ella surged forward, desperate to escape the suffocating darkness that writhed behind her. Each footfall reverberated with a haunting reminder of the shadowy figures yearning for release, their cries lingering like bitter echoes. Clutching the shard, she felt the coldness seep not just from the shadows but from within herself. Was this legacy a stain she could ever cleanse? The light ahead grew brighter, yet every step felt heavier, the air thickening with dread. She could barely see, each patch of light flickering like it was about to extinguish. Sweat trickled down her back, her heart raced like a drumbeat of impending doom. Just as she thought she might be free, a loud crash erupted, shaking the chamber. The earth trembled beneath her, the shadows responding with a cacophony of anguished roars. Ella! Come to us! They shrieked, their voices sinking into a despairing crescendo that clawed at her, dragging her back. With her resolve wavering, she pressed on, determined to break the chains that bound her family to this torment. Stay strong. She muttered through clenched teeth, the shard feeling lighter in her hand as she envisioned her mother's face, her laughter echoing in her mind, a memory sharp enough to fuel her will. In that moment, Ella reached the edge of the chamber. The light blazed behind her, casting elongated shadows but not the darkened forms of her ancestors. No, this light was alive, a brilliant wall pulsating with warmth and promise. She steeled herself, remembering the stories of courage that had been passed down through generations. Then, suddenly, the ground split open before her, and she lost her footing. She tumbled, arms flailing, the shard slipping from her grasp and shattering on the rock below. The fractured light dimmed, and a dissonant laugh echoed from all around, growing louder as the darkness surged. No! Ella screamed, panic igniting her vision. Without the shard, what could she possibly use to fight back? In that chaotic moment, she caught sight of something shining beneath the jagged edges of the cavern wall. It shimmered with a promise just like the glass had. A strange compulsion drew her closer. As she bent down, she revealed an ancient locket, ornate and encrusted with delicate carvings. The moment she touched it, a surge of energy coursed through her, striking and unfurling like wildfire. Images flashed before her eyes, the faces of her ancestors merged with their pain and longing, and among them, a singular figure stood out. A young girl with Ella's own eyes, emanating hope. Free me, the apparition pleaded, her voice like a gentle breeze mixed with sorrow. I don't know how. Ella stammered, feeling the weight of her family's history crash down like a tidal wave. But suddenly, she realized the power was within her. This connection, this locket, could hold the key to not only her own fate but the salvation of her family. With renewed determination, she raised the locket high, feeling the power swell within. The shadows recoiled, screeching in a horrifying symphony. "No! You cannot control us!" They howled, their voices weaving a web of chaos around her. "I am not you!" Ella shouted, feeling the strength of her lineage surge through her. She pressed the locket against her heart. Time slowed as the light enveloped her, pushing back the obsidian wave. A blinding flash erupted, and as it did, she could see their faces, the anguish transforming into a muted whisper of peace. Perhaps she could reverse the curse that had plagued them for generations, but darkness blitzed in again, the shadows refusing to yield. They lunged at her with venomous intent, wrapping around her in a vice grip of despair. "Your heritage is your prison." One silhouette snarled, its voice crawling into her mind. Ella gasped as the pressure mounted, her vision narrowing. Each no was a taunt, each attempt to stand her ground met with a fresh wave of shadows. Panic clawed at her insides. She could feel the locket's warmth fading, its light flickering like a candle's flame in a storm. "Let go of her." Another familiar voice rang out, a fierce whisper from the past, urging her to fight. The shadows hesitated, recoiling for an instant. Could it be? Could her ancestors finally be aiding her in this dark hour? Ella closed her eyes tight, drawing strength from all the lost souls around her. It was time to take back what was theirs, to break the cycle of suffering. But first, she had to face the sinister truth of her family's past. Would unlocking that truth cost her everything? A powerful roar filled the chamber as she pressed onward, determined to hold the light. Could she rewrite their fate, or would her courage lead her straight into doom? "Ella!" The darkness hissed, and with that, the fight for light and life collided in a desperate frenzy. But as the shadows lunged again, Ella could only wonder, would this be the moment she finally fell into oblivion? Or could she discover the strength to shatter the darkest legacy of all? The echoes intensified, an unbearable cacophony that pounded against Ella's ears. The darkness twisted around her like a living entity, a maze of despair entwining her limbs and tugging her every time she dared to advance. The locket pulsated in her grip, its warmth flickering against the chilling shadows that choked the air. "Ella! It's coming!" Her ancestors' voices warned, urgency thrumming through the locket's core. She squeezed it tighter, feeling the icy fingers of fear scratching against her resolve. With a surge of adrenaline, Ella pushed herself to the front of the cavern. The light surged again, fierce and unyielding, illuminating ancient inscriptions on the cavern walls. Words carved by people long gone seemed to writhe in agony, their old stories entwined with the beating of her heart. They told of daughters lost, even those who shared her blood, each one vanishing as they turned 16. "They are trapped here too," she whispered to herself, memories of laughter and warmth flashing through her mind, memories that were now stained with the smell of decay and despair. The shadows shrieked, their voices building to a shrill crescendo. "You are part of us. Your fate is written." They tugged at her, each whispered promise a sticky web pulling her towards the abyss that lay behind them. "Join us!" They cried in agony, entreating her to give in, to surrender. "No!" Ella shouted, her voice fierce and clear, cutting through the chaos. "I will not be like you." The locket glowed brighter, and she felt a rush of power, more potent than fear itself. It raced through her, igniting a flame of defiance that banished the chill momentarily. As she tightened her grip on the locket, she could see the faces of her ancestors swirling within a blend of hope and despair. The little girl with her eyes, pleading still. "You must release us." The apparition insisted. "You are our only chance." Ella felt a jolt as the shadows surged forward, driven by rage and desperation. They lunged again, and in that split second, Ella remembered her mother's words, the stories she told of their lineage, of the ones before and the pact made, long before. It was never just a curse, it was a fight for freedom. It was a pact of protection twisted into chains of despair. It was wrong. Not anymore. Ella screamed, vision narrowing down to that flickering light. She threw the locket into the ground before her, watching as the darkness writhed and recoiled. The pulse of the locket ignited like a supernova, blindingly bright, casting shadows away and illuminating the ancient writing. Suddenly, she understood. The inscriptions weren't just warnings, they were instructions. To break the curse, I must embrace it not as a daughter, but as a liberator. She thought, a path revealing itself amid the chaos. The shadows slithered, hissing, horrified. You will doom us all. Not if I can save you. Ella's words stung like a whip cracking, echoing through the chamber. She clasped her hands together and focused, her will merging with the power of the locket and the souls of her ancestors. She felt their agony fueling her strength, their hope igniting her spirit. I release you, I free us. The cavern erupted in blinding light. The shadows shrieked, flailing, twisting into forms of pain, anguish replaced by an odd sense of calm. They were drawn back, retreating into a dark corner of the chamber, pulled like moths to a dangerous flame, but just as victory beckoned, she felt an icy thrust near her heart. Something cold and ominous surged from behind, a last desperate bid from the dark that had plagued her line for generations. You will fail. The voice howled, echoing through the chamber, and Ella felt her breath hitch. As tendrils of darkness wrapped tighter around her, her heart raced. Would her newfound courage be enough against the force seeking to pull her into the shadows? Had she truly unlocked their legacy only to seal her own fate? In that harrowing moment, Ella clenched her jaw, invoking the warmth of her ancestors. She had to transcend this, turn the tide marked by despair into a dawn of liberation. As darkness threatened to consume her, she felt the locket's glow diminish, but within the light, she found clarity. I am not just a daughter, Ella said defiantly, I am the change our family needs. The howls intensified, a symphonic blend of rage and desperation. Ella sensed the final confrontation was looming. With renewed determination, she prepared herself to battle not just for her survival but for the very soul of her family. Would she finally break free, or was this darkness her ultimate destiny? Would she finally unearth the truth of the Ellison curse? The shadows lunged once more, and with a bated breath, Ella prepared for the fight of her life. Ella's breath came in quick, uneven gasps, her heart a thunderous drum against the backdrop of shadow and despair. The darkness writhed around her, a living entity with hatred, anger pulsing in waves, desperate to overwhelm her will. She could feel it, the icy tendrils clawing at her sanity, urging her to surrender to the deep-seated legacy of her family. The locket, glowing dimly now, rested heavily in her palm like a fierce heart that pulsed with the memories of her ancestors. Their pain surged through her veins, igniting a rage she had never experienced before. I will not let you take me. Ella shouted defiantly, whether to herself or the dark, she could not tell. I choose my fate. The shadows recoiled, their cries twisting into maddened howls. They encircled her tightly, pressing in with a suffocating grip, each movement of theirs like an echo from a cursed past. You think you can escape? You are us. They screamed, their voices blending into a chilling cacophony. With a fierce determination, Ella pressed the locket to her heart, her body trembling as she focused on the light within. No. I am not part of this curse. The moment the words left her lips, the locket blazed with an ethereal brightness, illuminating the chamber in a celestial glow. The shadows shrieked, their writhing forms flickering like dying embers against the brilliance. The light carved a path through the darkness, and for a heartbeat, Ella felt like she was emerging from an ocean, desperate to reach the surface. Each pulse of the locket matched her heartbeat, resonating with the shared souls of her family ancestors longing for release. They were not merely trapped, they were waiting for her to find the strength to break their chains. Free us! They cried, their chorus now a hauntingly beautiful plea rather than a tormented wail. Ella could sense their energy coiling around her, flooding her with an immense power. Love intertwined with loss, and in that sacred moment, the realization struck like a shard of glass breaking through the murky waters of fear. Your legacy is not your prison, it can be your strength, she whispered fervently, her resolve hardening. Ella became the intercessor, the one who would reclaim the legacy of loss and turn it into freedom. With every ounce of her spirit, she summoned the light, releasing all her grief, every memory, every painful legacy that had been passed down like a generational baton. I will break this cycle, she shouted, her voice filled with defiance as she raised the locket high. The shadows recoiled, but they were not gone, they surged again, angry and lost, wrapping around her again in a bid for control. You cannot hold me, she cried, feeling the encompassing rage of those who had come before her. I free us all. As she channeled the hopes and dreams of her ancestors, their laughter, their love, their fears, light erupted from the locket, a brilliant burst that flooded the chamber. The shadows writhed in agony, their screams becoming a chaotic symphony, and for the first time, Ella felt their true power united. They were not her enemies, they were her family. In one blinding flash, the light absorbed the darkness, turning it to ash. The echoes of the cursed collective faded, their features softening as they were released from their torment. Thank you, one ghostly voice murmured, echoing through the rushing tide of light. You have freed us. Ella felt their presence encircling her, wrapping her in warmth, their gratitude radiating like sunlight breaking through a winter storm. In that instant, she understood she had faced her fears not just for herself but for everyone before her. The locket pulsed one last time, its glow fading into the embrace of the dawn outside. As the shadows evaporated, silence wrapped around her like a soft blanket, and the chamber transformed into a place of serenity. She stood alone among the wreckage, feeling the sun's gentle warmth spill through the cracks, illuminating the space with hope and promise. Mom, she whispered, her heart racing, longing for reassurance. Moments later, a soft shimmer appeared, revealing her mother standing at the threshold, a figure emerging from the light, tears glistening, a proud smile lighting up her face. Ella, you did it, you did what none of us could. Her mother's voice quivered with an emotion both tender and fierce. You broke the curse. Ella rushed into her mother's arms, the embrace warm and familiar. I was so scared, she murmured, clinging tightly, the weight of her family's legacy finally settling into a place of acceptance rather than fear. Together, we will honor them, her mother spoke softly, wiping away Ella's tears with gentle hands. From this day forward, we reclaim our story. And as they stood together, bathed in the soft glow of a new dawn, Ella finally felt the shadows of her past recede. She stood strong, no longer a victim of a lineage but a powerful force forging ahead, transforming fear into legacy, and darkness into light. As the sun rose over Willow Pines, illuminating the path ahead, Ella knew this was just the beginning. The weight of her family's past had morphed into a legacy of resilience, and she was ready to write the next chapter, one of strength, love, and freedom. Now, for you, the journey doesn't end here. You need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss our next exclusive stories that will keep your heart racing and your mind intrigued. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your love for the story, and flood the comments section with your reactions, theories, and what you think might happen to Ella next. Don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us bring them into the adventure.